In today's lesson, we're going to learn about the different types of angle relationships that are formed when you have a parallel line cut by a transversal. So we're going to learn about alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, consecutive exterior and interior angles, what are supplementary angles, corresponding angles, and then last but not least, vertical angles. And you're probably wondering where that is, but that's where the sticky note that you have been provided will come in handy with our notes. All right, so before you begin, just make sure you pause the video and set your foldable up like this with the tabs cut, and then press play so that you can continue with the lesson. First, let's take a look at alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are congruent. So go ahead and write that down. And you're going to need two different color markers for this. So we're going to identify the different types of alternate interior angles. But first, let's underline what the keywords are. Alternate interior angles are angles that are inside the parallel lines and face opposite directions. So those are your keywords, inside and opposite. Circle those two words for me. Okay, so inside the parallel lines, these are the angles that are inside the parallel lines. So one pair would be angle 3 and angle 6. And because they're congruent, angle 3 is equivalent to angle 6. All right. Using a different color marker, we're going to identify the only other pair. So that could be angle 4 and angle 5. So then angle 4 is congruent to angle 5. Both of these are representations of alternate interior angles. Now, alternate exterior angles are congruent as well. The only difference between the two, they are angles that lie outside of the parallel lines and they face opposite directions. So think of outside and opposite. So one pair would be angle 1 and angle 8, and they are congruent to each other. And then using a different colored marker, angle 2 and angle 7 are congruent to each other. Now, let's look at consecutive exterior angles. Another word for consecutives, you might hear the word same side interior angles. So I'm just going to write that. Same side exterior angles. Make that correction. Exterior. Okay. All right. So these are angles that are outside the parallel lines and on the same side of the transversal. So one pair that we could look at for consecutive exterior is angle 1 and angle 7. And so supplementary simply means that when I add these two angles together, they're going to equal 180 degrees. All right. My only other pair that I could use is angle 2 and angle 8. So angle 2 plus angle 8 equals 180 degrees. There are only two pairs for consecutive exterior angles. Now let's hop over to consecutive interior angles. Consecutive interior angles, or same side interior angles, are also supplementary. And these type of angles are inside the parallel lines and on the same side of the transversal. Okay, so inside we have angle 4 and angle 6. If I add these two together, the sum total will equal 180 degrees. And then my other pair would consist of angle 3 and angle 5. If I add these two angles together, they will total up to equal 180 degrees. Okay. Now let's take a look at supplementary angles. And to be specific, I want to share another set of pairs that are considered supplementary, and they're called linear pairs. So these next couple of examples, these are not the only examples, but I'm going to give you a few. And of course, we already know supplementary angles are two angles that when combined, when you add them up, they equal 180 because they create a straight line. They're right next to each other. So usually it consists of an acute angle and an obtuse angle combined. So circle those words. Those are the key words. All right. Now, let's look at our first pair. 1 and 2. Angle 1 and angle 2, they're right beside each other. So they'll total up to equal 180. You could even do 3 and 4. And that would equal 180 degrees. You could do 5 and 7, because notice they're right next to each other. They create a line. Angle 5 and angle 7 will add up to equal 180 degrees. You could even do 6 and 8. These are all considered linear pairs. You could even do, if you wanted to, you could do angle 2 plus angle 4. That would total up to be 180. And you could do angle 5 plus angle 6. It's all in how you pick it. But for those linear pairs, they're going to be right next to each other. And basically, they create a straight line. So let's look at corresponding angles. And then vertical angles will be the last step in regards to our angle relationships. All right, corresponding angles are considered congruent. And one tip that you can use in identifying corresponding angles, they're going to lie on the same side of the transversal, except one of the angles is going to be inside the parallel lines and one is going to lie outside. So let's take a look at a few examples. We have angle 1 is going to be on the same side as angle 5. So these two are congruent to each other. Notice they're on the same side of the transversal. One is on the outside exterior and one is on the interior inside the parallel lines. Another pair that we could use are angle 3 and angle 7. Okay. Another pair we could use is angle 2 and angle 6. These two angle measures are going to be congruent to each other. And then last but not least, if you have room, let's fit this last one. Angle 4 is congruent to angle 8. All right. Now, with that sticky note, what I need you to do, you're going to simply attach it here and then pause the video, then press play, and you'll copy the last example for vertical angles, and that will complete our notes. Okay, last but not least, vertical angles are also congruent. They basically share a same point and they're diagonally across from each other. So these are your different angle pair relationships listed here below. And that concludes your angle pair relationships notes.